Hey folks, and welcome to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast. I'm your host, Mishka Katkov, and in this episode we're going to talk about IP creation. Now, how this podcast came to be. We had an article on Deconstructor of Fun blog discussing how to overcome a post-launch slump. It was a case study of Merge Garden, a game developed by Futureplay and published by Futureplay and Plarium. It's a Plarium-owned studio. The story of the game is it launched, looked nice, scaled nicely in the beginning, and then, just like many other games, started declining. A year later, after the initial decline phase, the game started scaling up again, and this time around it looked unstoppable, but it also looked very different. There were many product side improvements, but most importantly, there were improvements on the visual and storytelling side of the game. Essentially, the game had a whole new brand. So, in this podcast, I'm joined by Martin Mohr, who's Chief Creative Officer of Bond Creative Agency, the agency that worked with Futureplay to come up with this new brand, this new narrative, and this new positioning in the market. I think this podcast episode is relevant. IPs are important. I think it's incredibly insightful, at least for me. I have not been in IP creation that many times before, and I hope you enjoy it. So, without further ado, Martin Mohr from Bond Creative Agency. This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance. Welcome to the podcast, Martin.
Thank you, Mishka.
Martin, where are we?
Where we are?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I guess we're in Finland.
Yes.
Helsinki.
Correct.
And then in Hakaniemi,
Yes.
Singasari,
Yes.
in a podcast studio where we are not using any of the
Yes.
built-in podcast equipment.
And in more particular, we are at a creative agency's Helsinki studio.
Okay, yeah. So, that's maybe a quite essential piece of the question. So, we are Bond. We are, you could call us a brand consultancy agency.
And so we met at Slush, and
Yeah.
it was a very interesting story. And this is the backstory for this podcast, which makes it incredibly relevant. We had a piece on Deconstructor of Fun about Merge Garden. It's a game by a Finnish studio, Futureplay Games. It was acquired in 21 probably, by Plarium, a huge Israeli gaming company. Anyway, they launched a game in 2020 called Merge Garden. And that was at the top of the whole merge genre trend. The game was looking pretty good. Like, it made 2 million pretty quickly, like reached the 2 million a month. So good for a small studio. Led to an acquisition, and then it led to a slump of that game. And people kind of wrote the whole studio off in a way that, well, they had something, they weren't able to really capitalize on it, and they clearly can't work in the setup of this new owner. Lo and behold, 2 years later, we got record revenues, continued growth. It looks different. It feels different. And when we analyze this game of like, where did this growth came from? It's like, when I look at this, like the characters, they weren't a utilitarian anymore. They were like, they had a backstory. There was something interesting about them. They looked totally different. There was a narrative. And it's not more like, oh, come here and clear this garden and decorate it. But it was more about the people you meet, the curse that you have to solve, the characters, the enchantments, the story. It was so much more interesting. The visuals, crisps, bright. So everything changed on that side. The marketing, of course, evolved significantly after all these changes and really reflected the story and actually brought people to interact with the stories. And then, of course, on the game side itself, there were events, but it wasn't like the game changed significantly. It was more how it felt and looked changed significantly. So we did this post, we published it, we got a lot of readers and good reactions. People learned a lot maybe. And then you came to me at a Deconstructor Fun event. And then you came to me at a Deconstructor Fun event, and you were like, we are from the Bond Agency. And everything that you described in that blog post about all these changes that made this game grow is our doing. I was like, wait a minute, what? And then we started communicating, and then you talked to Futureplay. They gave you okay to do this episode to really talk about it. So we're here to talk about the story behind the story, because while Futureplay is a great studio and they're executing perfectly, the turnaround is, I would argue, a lot of your company's doing, right? Or together.
Yeah, well, I would first of all, I absolutely cannot take the full credit for this. I think the whole collaboration to begin with has been really flavored by a very, very strong collaboration, and that was actually one of my points here today. Is also that I think to achieve something like this, you really have to have a buy-in from everyone who is involved in it, and there needs to be also, you know, hearts at fire on both sides. And so I think this we had a very natural way of collaborating. I think our companies are quite similar in the way we are sort of no-nonsense way of working and very honestly working with people. And the same goes for Futureplay. So that kind of openness and eagerness for collaboration was super important for the success of this story. So I think I would state like this, that we were approached by Futureplay not to begin with to really change anything in the game, which you already mentioned. We were approached to help them make their branding and their marketing better, performing, stronger. And I think it was very clever from their side to, you know, we discussed earlier, like, you know, why would they approach an external agency to do something like this? But I think when you're already in a situation where you're looking not so much from what you're doing inside, what you're doing with the game and the product itself, but you're looking at how your marketing is performing out in the world with the consumers, with your audience. It's very smart actually to think about engaging an agency sort of outside in and applying what an agency like we do is, you know, we are every day we're working with target audiences of all sorts in all kinds of different industries. And so that's really how we work. We look at the world, we look at the culture of the target audience, what really makes them excited, what they do in their lives, besides gaming, not just gaming, but really understanding that audience. And Futureplay had already also been doing a lot of research on their target audience. So we were not starting from scratch. And so they approached us and said, we need a stronger story. Predominantly, we need that story so we can tell more engaging stories in marketing and in branding. And of course, that resonated a lot with us. So then there was this caveat that, you know, it needs to sort of be fitted into the game we have. Don't change any major game mechanics. That's a very long pipeline. Let's not do that. But we do have something simple like character portraits and some dialogue that are already in there. There are ways that we can make the story influence sort of like the game itself as well. And I think that is where this is a little bit like kind of groundbreaking. It's not that you hire a branding agency to help you make better marketing or stronger kind of branding for your game, but it was that little detail that we are willing to sort of create a strong synergy between that and the game, the assets inside the game as well, to build that bridge.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla. Xsolla empowers developers and publishers to market, sell, connect, and optimize their games globally. From payment solution to a full suite of tools designed to grow your game's revenue while fostering a loyal player base. Xsolla is your game's gateway to worldwide success. With Xsolla, the world is your playground. Visit xsolla.com today and find all the solutions that will help you to power your games into success everywhere. This podcast is brought to you by Data AI. Now, you're asking, didn't they get acquired by Sensor Tower? They did, and that's awesome. Here's why. Whether you loved using Data.ai or Sensor Tower, the combined company will offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the full digital customer journey. Exciting times lie ahead as Sensor Tower and Data AI join forces. Go to data.ai or sensortower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, so it's not only the outside, but also affected the inside.
Yeah.
What kind of materials? So, for folks listening, they at some point they will want to get very practical suggestions. So, in this type of scenario, you have so the team has already a product, and they have marketing, but it's not performing as well as it is. So, what kind of a material is optimal for you guys to start? Like, what's the best starting point when doing this type of a work?
I think it varies a lot, of course. We are not gaming is one thing that we are doing now. We are doing many different industries, so the challenges are always quite different. But our beginning point will always be, and I think people who don't know or haven't worked with us will think that we are spending an enormous time upfront in understanding the challenge and the problem that is at hand, or the opportunity that is there. Like old anecdotes, we have like our, we also do interior design, so we are quite broad design agency in that sense. We had our interior design head of interior go and work in a shop for like a week to just understand what is going on there. So the same here, we ask a million questions about the product, the in this case, of course, the game, the mechanics. Why can you merge stuff? Why can you do this? What is the purpose of this functionality in the game? And really trying to understand what we are working with. So a beginning point for us is always like diving into the business and understanding that opportunity. And that can always vary, of course.
Yeah.
That might be.
So team comes in, they say, hey, this is the product. It gives you all kinds of materials, whatever they have about the game, their own design documentation. Their designers come in and present about the game, and the product people come in and talk about the sort of numbers that they're looking, or the marketing people will come in. You guys play the game a lot. What's the next step from there? Like, or in this case, like, what was the next step?
I think...
Because this was your first game project, right?
This was the first game project. We are now... it's quite interesting because now we are also working with an indie out of London. We're working with this massive multiplayer simulation out of Berlin. So we have quite a variety of types of games, and that's also what I meant, like all the challenges are different. There's nothing that is always completely the same. But I think so basically what we would always do is, of course, in this case, we needed a story, right? And to be very honest, Frank here, like when we were approached by Futureplay the first time about writing a game narrative, of course, we had a lot of questions for ourselves as well. Is this like, we are a design and branding agency. We do experiences all the time. We do marketing, even advertising. But then, looking at the challenges that they were facing, realizing that this is actually what we do all the time for all our clients. When you build a brand needs a strong story. Every brand needs a strong story. Like every brand that that you care about has some kind of story that you can tap into or resonate with. If a brand doesn't have a story, that's a problem. Like so it's also a way of unifying everyone working in that company under that same story. So first it was, after trying to understand their audience, we learned they had already done a bunch of research. So we knew the main target audience was women, I think between the 30 and 50 age group. And of course that already kind of gives you some indications of, we always want to look a bit broader. Okay, so that's the core audience, but there might be bigger audiences sort of around that also. So of course we then look at, as I said earlier, what they care about. So whatever story we would come up with would be something that, again, is from outside in. It's something that works with the world that they live in. For example, I should give credit to Jonas here, their marketing director as well. He's a great guy and very smart. He had already started this big research, and they knew that this target audience, of course, they knew kind of what TV shows that they cared about. The drama and kind of like TV thriller things, and a little bit of mystery and
serial killer shows.
Yeah, sort of like this, a little bit that. And then, of course, we had some competitors who were doing a little bit more that.
Yeah.
So we were kind of steering clear
from Merge Mansion.
Yeah, from that type of story. And so we knew, of course, we had to carve out our own space there. And it had to be a story that would resonate with the audience in a way. So we actually, what we do then, our next step is we set out directions. Mm-hmm. So we would never just come and say, okay, so here it is, the thing that will work. We work through many different directions that kind of build on different insights. It could be something from the game that is unique from the game, or it could be something really close to that target audience and their world. And then we kind of latch on to these different insights about what we're working on, and then we form. We tend to call them simple ideas. And simple doesn't mean easy.
Yes.
Or fast or quick. Simple is actually the hardest that you can do. Distilled concepts. Yeah. They tend to have sort of like a title. We write a little narrative for them, and then of course, being a game, we thought about the characters also. What type of characters would this involve? And we thought about how it actually related to the merging happening in that garden. Like, it's not very logical that you can merge two plants. If you think about it from a storytelling perspective, it's like there must be something going on there.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of the hooks we take, and then we build stories on that. And then they actually took, I think we had about 6 different big sort of territories to explore. And we then created these kind of concept pages for that. Again, very close collaboration with the team at Futureplay, and a lot of iteration. And then those were actually tested then with players.
Got it. And so when you come with different directions, it's like you basically give like, okay, here's 4, 5, 6 ways we can go forward. Which one of these you like and which one you don't like, and then the team chooses. Like who on the team size chooses, and like how does that work?
I think that varies a lot.
Yeah.
From company to company.
Okay.
I think when it comes to Futureplay, it was a very kind of positive experience in the way how they involved a lot of people in the process, from, as you said, product designers, game designers. And a bunch of the founders and the marketing people. So everyone kind of have a say and a chance to influence the decision. But then they were also really good at having someone just then take the decision on which ones would move forward.
Got it.
But the final verdict was the end users and the concept that they liked the most. And I don't know, you know, maybe sometimes we tend to think that people just like play something we put in front of them, or that there's maybe it's like not where you should ask like what's the right thing to do. Yeah. Like you shouldn't ask the audience like is this the right or is this the right, like but in this case it really confirmed our favorite concept was the one that came back like far above the others.
What kind of testing were you doing, like qualitative testing or quantitative testing? Like was like
it was
campaigns running?
Was quantitative mostly.
Got it.
It was a lot of players.
So
there was. I don't know much about that. I met with their team, the testing team there.
Yes.
Very cool group of people there, and we got like reports back from that, basically from them, and honestly like very impressive reports on different metrics and what tracked titles, characters, visuality. That was really interesting to see.
Yeah, Plarium is definitely a step ahead when it comes to game branding. With the Raid Shadow Legends is like it's quite a masterpiece of marketing. And then of course game design and everything. But okay, interesting. So they handled the final analysis, and and providing.
I think that like at least that part of because they gave, I think, at least to my understanding, Futureplay had a huge level of freedom with this,
Yes.
which I think also again was a key to the success. But they helped with everywhere where they could kind of come in with some muscle and do some heavy lifting. I think that's where they helped.
How did Futureplay find you?
So as we just discussed before the podcast, it's like living in Helsinki.
Yes.
It's very, very it's impossible to not run into game people.
Yeah.
I think, and I've actually when I think about it, it's even incredible that I haven't had a project with some game company over all these years. Like back in the days, I did have a little bit of work with Rovio and Angry Birds, but it was much more like kind of big advertising agency kind of work, and not this kind of in-depth level of work. But yes, so I know a couple. Sam or Samuli is actually an old neighbor of mine.
The art director.
But he at least knew me and was asking, to begin with, if I had any contacts for this sort of work. So it wasn't even like, hey, come in and let's work together. It was more like, can you help us out with figuring this part out? Because they knew they needed a little, maybe something a little bit from outside to shake things up. And then we jumped on the chance and actually pitched very formally to them. I think there was even a couple of agencies there.
Yeah, of course you have to run with few ones. So
that's kind of how it worked. It was a little bit, almost a little bit random at that point. Yeah.
So let's say I'm a game studio head, and I need to spice up the game that we have. It's not performing as well, and I feel like it's really on the marketing. I see from the numbers it's on the marketing side, and I see my competitors are really like pushing on the brand as well.
Yeah.
Walk me through the timeline. So I connect with creative studios. What am I looking for? Am I looking for brand studios? Like, what is Bond?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe we don't come from as much from like an advertising sort of field. We are a design agency, so we have people who design products and experiences. Digital experiences, physical experiences, and so I think we have a quite strong understanding of what it means to actually own a product and sit on a product and with a product and how to get that product to market.
Got it.
So I think maybe that feels like there's a quite natural fit there if you are not only caring about your advertising, but that you're caring about maybe also giving your game like a facelift that because
not a makeup but a facelift.
A facelift, yeah, or pivot it a little bit.
Yeah,
this is actually one of the points I think it's really important in this conversation is there is just no time to not look perfect.
Yeah.
There's no room to not look perfect anymore. It's the gaming market is now really saturating.
Very mature.
It's very maturing right now, and so there was a bunch of loopholes, and they're sort of slowly filling up, and so there is this incredible competition for people's eyeballs now. And one of my points here, if I can make anyone today, is that don't stop doing performance marketing. Of course, you have to do that. That's part of the game, but that's like an extremely. It's like a very short term. It's like an immediate purchase window with the consumer that you're hitting there with performance marketing. You are hitting them when they are there, playing something and kind of open to maybe download this thing, and then you end.
Yeah.
And then you might hit them again at some point, again in a very short moment of time. When you are competing extremely saturated environment where everyone is doing the same, you can be like completely drowned out by a big player. And so you lose the opportunity to get, maybe even in front of them, very often. So this is where you need to combine it with brand building.
Yeah.
Because brand building is storytelling. And this is also, again, we can talk about this, but why would a casual game like Merge Gardens focus on storytelling, right? Storytelling is it's like the only thing that can keep us hooked in front of a flat screen for hours.
Well,
right?
there's plenty of results. Like when we look at the data from let's say Google when they when they give data about different markets and what is important for players, it's almost not dependent on the category, whether it's casual or more mid-core, whatever. Story or narrative is always at the top of what players want.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's a complete misunderstanding that casual games can't have deep storytelling.
And it's, well, there's that, but also there's a misconception of what story is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we get narrative designers in games that are coming in from narrative-driven console games, and they are used to being that your audience is going to sit on a chair and watch for a long time, press through different dialogues that they came up with, which are really great and a true, marvelous storytelling.
Sometimes.
Yeah, well, can be marvelous storytelling. But nevertheless, that is not the only way you tell a story.
No.
And can you talk to me a little bit about first let's go through the whole flow, and then let's talk a little bit about what is a narrative and storytelling on mobile, because that is you don't have the same attention span as you have with a person who paid $80 to buy a game that they've been waiting for a long time.
No, that's a completely different thing.
And are sitting in front of a
that's
TV.
That's like making popcorn and watching Lord of the Rings for 3 hours, right?
Exactly.
It's a different mindset.
Exactly.
But I just want to finish the thought train about the performance marketing versus brand building, or not versus, but in combination.
Yeah.
Because when you build a brand, you build a brand inside the mind of your audience. The story you tell sticks. Like a story sticks, like performance marketing doesn't stick in people's minds. But a story that you're telling, like a great, intriguing, interesting story that you put in front of the audience, is something we as human beings, we keep.
Yeah.
It intrigues us. We think about it. That was exciting. I want to know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
I might not download the game at that point, but because you told the audience something interesting, a story that they will go and they will mull it over and they will keep it in the back of their mind. And so you increase the purchase window in a way, if you want to talk really technical terms here. So because I'm always trying to get branding and marketing and things like that out of the magic. And because there is a reason to do this. It's you increase the window in which these people have you in the back of their mind.
Yes.
And so there is a much higher chance for them to actually get the game downloaded if you then hit them again with the performance marketing. So you're kind of instead of just doing performance marketing like this, if you add the brand building, I think there is some very fancy models for this, but you kind of have to combine performance marketing with brand building.
Of course.
And when you do that, you create these brand building bumps in people's heads. And every time you do that, you lift. And this is like a way to break out of this plateau that you were even mentioning in the beginning, how they had in a way flatlined a bit with their growth. And you almost mentioned it in an article as well, that they couldn't kind of buy their way out of that plateau, this performance marketing plateau. And then as soon as we start adding story and brand building on top of that, that is when we create this synergy between short and long-term efforts. And I believe really, I've never seen a model more accurate to what we did together.
So there's many interesting parts. I just want to go through the flow and then go through back to some of the things you said. So when you go through the flow of working with a design agency like Bond, you come in, you basically try to find a studio that is not only marketing, but perhaps for the needs is more product and experience focused as well. Somebody who can holistically understand your product. And that is really the first phase of your work together, is you give them the background materials, and like what are the type of background materials that you wish to have as you start working on the pitch?
I guess varies from game to game, but as much as we can.
Yeah.
And the more we know all the intricate details, we are quite particular. We go really in the deep with this stuff. But I think it's everything that can help us get to the same level of understanding as you have in your own company about your game. If we can't do that, and that means we often interview the founders, we interview marketing people, we interview the design. Yeah, we go deep. So our strategists spend quite a lot of time. Both me and strategists, we spend a lot of time just really talking with people and hearing also where the differences are and where there are disalignments. Something that can actually help you quite a lot, getting a third party in from outside to look at your game or look at your venture or business or whatever it is that you're doing, is actually to get someone in and ask you what you're doing.
Yeah, so somebody will tell you like, I don't know about this. Like, we should really just focus on A/B testing the product and not some stupid story. And you're like, interesting.
Or
okay,
even, someone will tell me that, this game is all about this and this. Yeah. And then the next one we talk with is like, the game is about this and this. Yeah. And then we end up with 8 different stories, right?
Interesting. And
about
so,
what it is actually about.
And you work on product strategy as well in that sense, because then you kind of help to align the team about what the game is
exactly,
really about.
So we end up in, I think this is where, you get this kind of moment in the room, is when people start like aligning on what it is that they are building and what their kind of passions and visions for the thing is. And then it becomes our job, and that's kind of where this aligns very well with all the other types of like design work and branding work we do. We then boil that down, distill that down into that simple idea, and that's often where we get from people when we take their strategy and their sort of really their business strategy and we boil that down into like a very, very simple narrative. That's kind of when it clicks, when people are like, holy shit, like how did you formulate it like that? Like, how did you output that?
I know exactly what you're saying. Like we've done,
So that's kind of the magic of course, of what we do as a branding.
It's like I'm just telling you
like,
back what you told me and just forming it. And they're like, we've never seen this so
exactly.
clear.
Yeah.
And now we totally understand. It's weird, but I know how it works.
Yeah. And it's fantastic from both sides.
They're like, this is monumental. You're like, well, this is what you said.
So I would say like there's no rules. It's just that if you start working with a company like us, we should not work for you, but with you. So get us in. I'll take any chance to spend a few days out of Helsinki with this weather.
Tell me about it.
But then it's about meeting up. It's about getting to know each other and feel like we are one team rather than that's our name. That's why we call Bond.
You've heard of Heroic Labs by now, and we keep talking about them because in today's mature market, you need every edge to be successful. Rather than spending those precious company dollars on building game tech, focus on building your game and shipping it. Get into your players' hands faster and grow your community. Heroic Labs is battle-tested partner and friend of the podcast. Their tech enables you to be flexible, creative, and scale for success. Heroic Labs has your tech stack covered. Whether you're looking for a world-class back-end game server, an amazing game development framework, fantastic live ops tooling, or reliable mass scalability, Heroic Labs has solutions for all of these challenges. And it's not just us at Deconstructor of Fun praising Heroic Labs. The company works with some of the world's biggest publishers on many of the beloved games. Focus on your game, save a big chunk of cheese, and avoid tech risks with Heroic Labs.
So, okay, first phase, somebody comes in to design agency, then understanding the product and misalignments as well. How long does that phase take you normally? Before you get to that pitch?
I would say we probably spend maybe 2 months, 3 months on that with Futureplay. But of course, that varies again. Sometimes there is a big rush to get something done. In this case, it was too important to not align and understand these things here in this case. So it depends a lot. Sometimes also customers have an incredible amount of data that we can just get and analyze from the beginning. Other times they have nothing and we need to interview and kind of drag out the information.
Got it. And then, so 2 to 3 months, you're understanding the product, talking to people, really bonding with them.
Yes, exactly.
What's the next phase? So then you do the pitch, right?
Yeah, then it kind of...
Or the plan.
Yeah, then it's like, we are not the... I hate this type of operation where you get briefed on something and then you walk away for 2 weeks and then you come back and everyone is nervous and you have to present what you've been working on for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then people are like, really? Oh, where did that come from? And so we have open Slack channels. We work straight with our clients every day. And if some idea, some lightning hits, we don't need to sit and kind of hold on that before the day where we present things. So we're quite in that sense iterative. That's also why I was like, ooh, when you said like we came and did everything. That's not how we operate. We do things with our clients.
Of course.
So it's a very open process all the time.
Yeah.
And of course you have meetings where you then want to put up a little presentation theater, and we care a lot about delivering the right insights before we move into the creative work, so everyone around the table understand that this is not like pulled out of the ear or head. It's something that we have actually founded on a true insight about the game or a true insight about the audience.
Okay, all right, got it.
And
so
it's kind of directions we are setting out there.
So 2 to 3 months working really with understanding and pushing it forward.
And it can be shorter as well. Yeah. I mean, if you are in a rush, we can be in a rush too.
Yeah, of course.
And speed
but
things
ideally, I think it's important to set up sort of ideal scenario that leads to the best possible results.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is like go through the flow so people understand how soon they need to connect with the studio. How long does it take to work instead of like, 2 weeks and then we got everything done.
No.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so, and like what kind of materials they need to have and so forth. So 2 to 3 months you're working with, embedded with the studio, really working on understanding and building out the plan.
Actually, what takes time is not so much our time usually. Yeah. It's getting interviews. It's getting time to sit with the right people.
They're
plan
busy.
these things. Take more time than you would think. But they are really important to us. So it's kind of our work, and then in between we are trying to get in front of the right people and have the right conversations.
Of course. So and then after the 2 to 3 months, like what's then?
If you have like everything laid out, it can be much quicker. But that's what people usually say they have.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about like a normal mid-sized studio, like Futureplay. What is it about? Like 100 people, maybe?
I think a bit less actually.
Yeah, actually no. It's like 50 to 70.
Yes, 60 last time.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Around,
So let's say it was a studio of 50, which makes it relatively small, to be honest.
Yeah.
So this type of a studio, of course, they have a mother company that has helped them with a lot of different materials. But let's say this is like not an indie studio, but a smallish free-to-play studio. And you work with them now for 2 to 3 months. You've aligned with everybody. Like, what is then the sort of like a presentation of a plan, or like what is that after the?
Yeah, but that's usually where it becomes more, maybe a bit more interesting and fun, because that's when you start to see the challenges or the opportunities kind of becoming ideas.
Yeah.
And so we won't really start designing anything at that point. We are showing kind of very early concepts. Mm-hmm. Visually, we take things from everywhere for inspiration. We use mood boards to sort of set the tone of the different directions. So we kind of try and give you this kind of a little snapshot of what this direction, where it will take us.
Okay, so after the understanding and the product as well as the team comes the mood board and direction phase. And during this phase, you're presenting those, but also testing them, right?
Yeah, so we wouldn't, of course, test something that everyone around the table is like, okay, this is wrong. Or,
but
this
the
doesn't
ones
feel right,
that they like.
Yeah, and in this case, we were actually, there was maybe only a few where they were so crazy, the concepts, that people were like, okay, this is so fun, but it's just too crazy.
Yeah.
And so maybe we don't test that one. But I think most of them actually went into test, which was quite interesting. In this case, the wishes around the table and the test audience, it was very aligned, which is so nice to see as well, that there is really an idea here that catches on with everyone. It is totally okay sometimes as an owner of a game or a product to say, no, I want to go this way. This might test it better with the audience, but I can see that this route will take us to a place where we need to go.
Of course. Because
so it's not always about testing. I think you really have to also... I know this industry likes to have everything in control with,
Depends. There are people with strong gut feeling, and you have to follow that. And I personally like the game of elimination, where you rather take away the ideas that are not performing and then say these are performing well, some better than others, but essentially just choose whatever you feel most loved it with and continue with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, again, it's a conversation that you have to have, and you have to also not just go always, gut feeling is important, but you have to then, if you are in doubt, you have to look at the data.
Yes, of course.
And how does this answer our challenge?
Of course.
And then you go from there. So.
And so after you've gone through that, so you present, test different ideas, and find something that both the team likes, or the ones who are responsible for the product, as well as what the market accepts, the best or among the best. And then the next stage, you start basically working on the assets, or what is the next stage from there?
Yeah, I guess we're still one step away from assets.
Okay.
So we usually, what we do then is, that's when our design teams, they really get into gear, building out these, we call them sketchbooks. And this is where our designers actually get to work, and they start for example, they start defining the look and feel of this particular direction that we have taken. Usually we have maybe 2 concepts at that time, sometimes only 1 concept, sometimes 2, because there are 2 candidates there and we want to really test them and take them further. And this is maybe where you start seeing also, in this case, for example, Merge Gardens really wanted also to update the visual identity at the same time with the story. So of course we started then working on the visuality of the logo, the colors, and the identity, and how these things could potentially affect the sum of the game. As I said earlier, the fact that they were willing to take this story not only as a marketing device, but bring it into the game, of course, it's music to our ears, because it builds that bridge for the user or for the player, a very consistent bridge from the marketing materials and into the game. So then that's where we start testing these things out. And by the way, this is also where we would start maybe considering what partners would we need to work with other than just us. We work with a lot of different companies when we start thinking about how we actually execute. For example, we scripted and we still script the films that you're seeing online. But we are working now with a director who is he has directed 3D animation earlier. So it's kind of a collaboration between us and him in kind of scripting out, and very much with Futureplay, because they know where they're going with the game. They know the plans, the coming events, and things like that. So for example, Jonas, their marketing director, he's very on top of all this. What part of these stories will make sense to bring out now? And then we have a really good friend, a 3D animation studio that then brings to life these films that you are seeing online. So it's a very collaborative process where we are maybe just helping a little bit our customers orchestrate all these different things. But this is something we start thinking about in this sketchbook phase. How do we actually bring things to life?
Got it. Interesting. And you, when you're thinking about this, you at this point, you know the product so well already in the marketing, so that you're able to really plan for different channels, different types of different types of content, essentially.
Yeah, also that. So of course, I would say so that we always, when we work on concepts, we start from a very, you could call it like a channel agnostic point of view.
Yeah, of course.
That the idea has to be more like an umbrella.
Yes.
That can fit into all the different channels we have, which is why we call it a simple idea.
Yes.
Because it needs to be simple enough that it is flexible enough to fit in everywhere. But yeah, we start then thinking about like, does it need to be here? How would this thing actually? So
how do we tell the story?
We call them touch points.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Where do you need to be? Tell us what touch points are important for you as a game. We don't know everything, so this again is a time where the game company will know their different channels. Maybe they have a Discord, or maybe they have other things, places they engage with the audience, and then we try with our sketchbook to give an impression of how the brand and the story can operate in those different environments.
Got it. And that's the sketchbook, and then then you decide with the company of like what are the touch points with the story, with the narrative, with the brand, essentially.
Yeah, and this is the first time you also start seeing if this actually has real legs.
Yes.
It's wow, okay, this we can tell an amazing little sub story here in this media. I love seeing beautiful illustrations coming out of Futureplay with our characters that are done in-house, but that fits into the game world, the universe that has been created. It's like, so it's really a quite remarkable experience to start with like a small idea that then see it kind of grow into all these different, and just become bigger and get its own life.
And how does the work continue from there? So your design team got into the gear, created the look and feel, defined the look and feel, updated the visual identity, really designed around the touch points in the game. What is the next phase from there? And how long does this phase last?
I think now we are probably like half a year in.
Half a year, okay.
Maybe a bit more.
Okay.
But that is like, it's quite typical for us, I think, that when we get to a point where we can start like executing, we probably spend, it depends. It can be shorter, it can be longer, depending on the size of the project. But I think here we are maybe about half a year in.
Got it.
So I think in total, maybe when we started, like, because of course we also had to wrap this phase up so we could actually start working with Futureplay on creating the actual assets, the films, the different touch points, as we talked about in reality.
And this
updates sites and the storefronts and like putting the narrative in there.
And so after the 6 months, really the creation of the touch point starts. So that is where you've designed everything, decided on the touch points, and then you start making the
story.
And the story,
or like
exactly. The simple story.
We have a chosen one, everyone is on board.
Yes.
The whole company.
And now you know where you want to communicate it.
Yeah.
And now you start making, the website, the shorts, updating the characters and so forth.
And the socks and the t-shirts.
And the socks and the t-shirts
and everything. For the company.
Exactly. And that's
it's very important.
So it's very interesting because it takes about 6 months to really align on that. And then you start that work. And is that work the type of work that just continues, or like?
Yeah, it usually actually I guess we are lucky that we are we work with customers who really like working with us. I think we have something like maybe 90% retention rate on our clients. So we have,
amazing.
It's really quite important to our business,
of course,
that we create work that people are like, we like this, and come back and need more. So we have kind of shifted gear now together with Futureplay, that it's now less about really defining. I think maybe I mentioned at some point earlier, but we ended up with this 25 pages storybook for their game, right? That we have kind of co-created. We have like a huge timeline that goes like 100 years back in time, and so many different characters that haven't even been revealed yet. So now they kind of have that. It's like almost like a story Bible, right? That we created that has the brand It has the characters. It even has tone of voice of individual characters that are. I think maybe some of that is still a little bit work in progress.
Yeah.
So that is sort of like almost like a done chapter now. But now what we are doing is we have these quite frequent check-ins. We are more in a way we are maybe working more like fee-based now.
Yeah.
When there is needs arising, when a new script needs to be ideated. So we don't know exactly what the next films how they will play out. We have a kind of rough idea, kind of a direction set for it, which is going to be amazing.
Yes,
mind-blowing.
of course.
Story is going to continue and in crazy ways. But then we sort of go a couple of films ahead. We sit down together with Futureplay, with the director and with with the 3D company, and we then start kind of planning out the next episode. And then we do kind of a little bit a different track. We also help them with doing different type of advertising.
Yes.
That kind of adds to the mix.
That's fascinating. Okay, it makes sense. So you basically work on a retainer, and they bring you.
It's not even a retainer. It's more, hey guys, do you have time next week?
Okay, got it.
And then we plan it out.
Yeah.
And now we are doing some shoots coming up, so then we have a little more strict timeline.
Yes.
Again, evolving another partner to shoot some commercials with us and so on.
So all in all, like in order to start seeing the results, you probably have to invest about 6 months.
Yeah, this is quite typical.
Yeah.
But honestly, it depends.
Of course, scope and what you're doing.
It depends on the scope, but it also depends on how quick you can rally your army.
Yeah.
To sit around the table. And for us, it's. By the way, you asked earlier, what's the difference between approaching an advertising agency or like a design agency? We are usually working with marketing departments. But we are working with marketing department and product owners, founders, CEOs of the companies. So we go a step deeper than you typically like. If you find we can do just a marketing campaign, like a piece of advertisement, I'm not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
But and this is also where I think. It becomes more meaningful to work with an agency like us because we actually work with the decision makers of the company.
Yes.
And when we then finally start to fold things out, as we're talking about now, has already been a green light from the founders, from everyone who actually needs to have had a say, and have been involved at some point in the process. So we are not just making a campaign; we are really going at the foundation of your brand, your company, your product. And it's kind of on that level that we are operating. And then after that, it gets so much easier for everyone, including we love when the company kind of plugs out and says, this was amazing, we know what to do now. We have a direction. We can work with this on our own. We are all 100% bought into this concept, and then that makes us extremely happy.
How? The next step to ask is like, how much does this type of work cost?
Yeah, so
of course it's scope dependent, and you can't. But just so that companies like of course when we're talking about live games, we're talking about user acquisition, we're talking about budgets of millions.
Yeah.
And this is something that optimizes your marketing spending as it is and improves the product so that it's coherent with the marketing, with the brand that you're telling. So I understand all these aspects, but it is a 6 month of investment both from your team, the game team, as well as the team from Bond. What is the ballpark numbers that we're looking at here? Working with a Nordic studio, so not an American.
Yeah, we are a Nordic studio, but I don't know if I even mentioned it earlier, but we have a London office, we have a San Francisco office, and a Dubai office, which is growing like a lot at the moment. And then we have a Tallinn office. So we actually have I think 25 different nationalities within 70 people.
Yeah. So it's okay. So you're a quite global studio.
Yeah, we are Nordic, but we are still global.
You're
we
not,
usually say we are small enough to be truly global.
Yeah.
Because we actually work together. Like we all work together.
Yeah.
We're not like a company that actually is just consisting of 5 different companies. We all work really tightly knit together. But now, like my finance department will be like looking in the back of my head now. What am I gonna say? I think you're right on the money. Like when you think about these insane games, like probably especially the casual mobile game industry, like the crazy games that you can actually create with this sort of work, then our fees they sound almost like ridiculously small in a way.
It's like comparing development fees, like where you could say, wow, you spent how much in making this game? But if the game in the end makes 250 million and you spend 5 at making the game, then
first time when we met, you were like almost laughing at me when I said that we are just operating like work for hire. You know, we are doing project based, fee based, and of course we can also negotiate something that's more like performance based.
I wasn't laughing. I was just saying that is not the best model if you can get a game to grow from amount of making a month to tenfold. And you're not getting any of the upside.
But I think it's very different. We are in a very different world.
Of course,
we are a creative agency. We work with many different types of customers and clients.
Yes,
and our work is to just add more creativity to the mix, and that's kind of what you pay us for, to come in and just boost your own creativity. But it's really hard to put a number specifically on.
We're talking 6 figures for sure.
Definitely we are in a 6 figures number, but we are maybe in the smallest one out of that when sort of starting out with us. And then I think it's quite typical that maybe, depending on sometimes it stays there. You kind of wrap up and finish up a project.
Give the keys and they can continue running
maybe
it.
Half of that 6-digit figure there is like the beginning, and then there's a little bit of like folding out and aiding in launching and getting things into the world. And then we kind of wrap up that phase, and then we go into maybe a more fee-based thing. And
it's honestly, it's not crazy. I've seen
a couple of 100,000 maybe over out.
That's relatively small, because I've seen launch videos cost hundreds of thousands, if even not closer to $1 million.
If you think about the investment, let's take an example like
an animation,
like Merge Gardens here. Like those animations, I can't, of course, I can't open up about what the investments in those are here, but you can just contact any live action TV commercial studio or 3D animation studio, and they will give you a ballpark on work like that. It's definitely, the decision here was to do premium because it was seen as a way to also kind of punch our fist through this like invisible ceiling. Just to do it also with quality. As I said earlier, people have no time for stuff that doesn't look great. There's too much good stuff on the shelves.
Exactly.
So we really wanted to aim for this kind of almost Pixar level stuff. And of course that costs money. And in terms of comparing that to like, our fees, then we are just a small part of that bigger puzzle. But as I always say with this stuff is that an awesome idea, like a great idea, is not defined by cost.
No.
It's not. Then you can decide later, like, how big are we going to take that idea? How are we going to fold it out?
Of course.
You see some of the most amazing spots where one person is looking at the camera and saying a couple of fantastic words to you that resonates.
And
that's the best spot you've ever seen. And then you see some kind of, luxury perfume commercial with
or just animation fight scene that is just boring. Oh, a dragon and a dwarf and a giant. Like I've seen this 1,000,000 times before.
So, can I
Of course.
Can I add a point?
You can't.
I think this industry has to really stop up a little bit for a moment now when competition is increasing on in the marketing space. It's very clear when you start working in this industry that there is this high level of copycatting, right?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong?
Yeah. Fast following, as we say.
Okay. There's a cool word, the cool word for it. I've seen even companies putting that we are not copycatting on their websites.
Yeah, we're getting inspired.
And it's getting, So there is absolutely nothing wrong in like copying amazing game mechanics or like money making systems. Or how you distribute your advertising through these advertising systems. Of course, you need to look like you just had now I don't remember his name, but you just had a guy talking about all this a couple of podcasts ago, and it was so fascinating to hear all this like all these ad placement systems and how.
Ad monetization.
So, all of that is super important. Copy. When you see that's what any product maker will do. You know, if it works, it works. So let's do more of that. But what I'm seeing a lot is that sort of mentality is like leaking into your brand building and into your marketing efforts. And please don't do that. Like, if you copy what everyone else is doing in marketing as well, and we see it. It's like, hey, we just saw these guys run this outdoor billboard on this big square with these things, and it looked amazing. And should we also do a billboard? Like, and I'm screaming in my head. I'm thinking
the 3D billboard that is like on the corner, like that turns.
It's like, does it resonate with your brand? Does it play any role in your story, in your brand, in your unique offering? Fine, it might be a great place to put stuff. But the motivation shouldn't be that, hey, look what these guys did. Let us do the same, right? And in the worst case scenario, you're just advertising your category. So if you do that, you're just advertising the entire category. If you just put gameplay, which, let's be honest, usually looks quite similar, because you have,
I wouldn't even notice the gameplay
you
of
can
Merge Garden
change visuality of the
to
games and say we go with a more flat shading, this and that, and we look this.
faster animation.
But to an audience, it's quite the same, right? If you just advertise like that and you just place the same things in front of the same people, in the same audience, head to head with the same competitors, then you advertise the category. And I want to give you an anecdote, because I just talked with a game developer and they had this problem that they had done this really cool mobile game that was sort of an interpretation of a very successful indie game. And they actually had great success with that. Small studio doing something really great, like and building this kind of small game very fast and growing well. And then enters this massive Chinese giant, right, like into the scene, and they just absolutely flood the environment with advertising and marketing. And the games are absolutely okay; they're visually quite different, but the game mechanics and it's kind of inspired by the same type of game mechanics. And what happened? What he was saying is like, it's so infuriating that now you look at the forums and the comments, and people are saying about our game. They're saying about our game. It's a copy of that Chinese one, right? It's totally like a copy of that. So before, when we talked about being able to measure the work we do, right? Is there any clearer metric or measurement on something you're not doing if you get that type of comments online, and you get that, and you basically, your entire marketing effort just stops flat. Because someone moved in there, and this is where I'm saying, like, would they focus a bit more on their brand and on the story, even though if the game doesn't necessarily have like a deep story on its own, but building a brand, building a story around what they have, something unique with its own point of view, they would absolutely not have these comments. people would understand that here is an independent story, here is something different from the other one. And I mean, this is 101 branding and marketing.
Of course.
This is like this disruption theory, right?
They could have actually gained from the Chinese competitor, because if they had a unique brand, they would have lifted the whole category and they would have risen on.
Yeah,
as a part of it.
and if they had that, it might have been someone else copying. Them.
Exactly, their marketing.
We see now that we are getting copied quite a bit to crazy amount, like in wild ways that I've never seen in any other business area. It's like 1-to-1 just copying our commercials, and which is so interesting. And of course, we were looking at that copying and thinking that actually, for the first time now, we're not worried about that at all, because we have this incredible story that we have planned out, this intricate, coherent story that we know. And this is just the first step of many steps, revealing and building out this story with our fan base. So copy all they want, like they will always be that copy.
Yeah,
so.
They're always several steps behind.
Yeah.
Because you have actually
And I know it's easy. Why? Of course it's easy. Like if you're just there to make quick money, it's easy to just copy. But it's definitely not doing anything to your brand. Like you see it with even fake ads, right?
Yes.
If there's any way to destroy your brand, it's just to do that.
Yes.
It's like the old burger commercials where the burger was like, 20 centimeters tall and juicy, and then you get this like
it's pressed down,
flat pressed.
What other learnings can you share from this process? Because like what you basically said is like you can copy the product, but do not copy the brand.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That is just not a place where that type of mentality will give you any gains at all.
And what other learnings like from this? Because this was your first project with gaming, and it went really, really well. Merge Garden is doing supremely well.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's been a fantastic, really fantastic to work with them, and I'm so happy for their success that they are.
Me too. And kind of like now you're working with other projects, and they're always different. You're working, as you said, you're working with MMO, kind of like a multi-platform MMO. You're working with Indie Studio now. Yeah. What are the sort of learnings that you're applying from Merge Garden to this next project? And like, what are the sort of learnings that you could share on your side, as well as give learnings to companies that are looking to get to work with creative agencies or design agencies?
I think maybe first and foremost, it feels like a huge step, right? But you don't have to do everything all at once. I think one way of looking at this process, or what we did, was that, of course, we started from needing a better story, and we started from needing maybe a little bit more catchy visuals, like a better visual hook, and then kind of from there, it's when we then landed on this quite unique, quite interesting story. It really got everyone fired up and excited. So I think you should allow yourself to just jump in and get started. Like I think first and foremost, just try out something, try and get started, try and see if this can work. I think that's maybe the first thing, and then let it grow from there, like grow, pun intended, with our garden here. But so that's maybe one thing, and then I hear I hear a bit now when I'm talking with different companies that there is this feeling that we are too small, or we are not ready. We are just kind of we are just carving out our space, and we have good gameplay, and that's what we are focusing on.
They're afraid to invest the time and money into it.
Yeah, but then as you said very clearly, like if you're already, if you are a company that can already put like, let's say 20, 30K, maybe a day or something like in your performance marketing, it's really not that crazy of an investment to start thinking about this. If there are ways that you can add a multiplier on top of your performance marketing by doing that little hard step of thinking about what your brand is and what your story is as a company. But I tell you, like, when you get there, the type of like unifying that can create across your owners, your product owners, your marketing department is just really amazing. And that's kind of then when you get everyone aligned under that one banner, that's when really great things can start to happen.
For sure.
So I think this is what we saw that we maybe didn't really grasp, as we also hadn't worked with a game company before, the many ways that this story could actually manifest itself throughout the whole company, and get everyone inside the company excited as well about the game.
Yeah,
and what they're doing.
And that's the big thing. It's like, it's not just a marketing campaign. It's not just a launch video. Like, this is pretty holistic approach, because you've essentially created them a design Bible, a roadmap for their future live ops, or not even live ops, but future content updates and content growth by introducing these characters and the whole storyline, so they don't have to figure out on the fly. And people change inside the companies, but they have this roadmap to follow for years to come, and that allows them to focus really on delivering against the product, executing, and not maybe be in a constant design of like, hey, what next, or like Halloween is coming, like what we should do for Halloween. But they have actually a roadmap, and then they can focus on driving the product.
Yeah, right on the money.
What other learnings can you say? That it takes longer than you anticipated, or like?
Yeah, maybe. No, I wouldn't say it takes longer. As we worked with we work with very big.
But gaming companies expect this to be faster?
I think everyone in gaming expects it to be next week.
Yes, that's what I assume. Yeah.
And that's maybe the biggest challenge we've met is to, when people start seeing the process or progress that is being made, they stop questioning, how much time it should take or shouldn't take. In the beginning, it's like, when the CEO hears that we are gonna meet again, at this time, or that the interviews will happen there, and then they usually realize that it's because of their own schedule that things are, happening at that speed. But when you can get past that, then I think, and you start seeing the actual gains being made by focusing enough on the beginning of the process, then everyone is like excited and happy about it.
Well, Martin, do you have I think there's a lot of insights that you've shared.
I hope I shared some meaningful stuff here.
I like this very much, because, and this is what I wanted to do the podcast, because I feel like the time of this sort of a lean startup MVP approach is over. Like, you can't just throw stuff on the market and see if it has traction or not. Maybe in some edge cases that could work now, but that's about it.
Yeah.
You have to be very deliberate with the products that you're building. You have to understand the audience. You have to test it with the audience. You have to constantly reiterate your position. As you said, you have to stand out in the crowded market. Not with just how you optimize your user acquisition channels, or whether you use TikTok this time or some other channel to grow. But you have to be deliberate in the sense, as you said, like, tell a story, build a brand, just like we see with any other product. And so games are not different anymore than any other product, like mobile games particularly. Like, we see this happening already in AAA for years, and now the same has come from this market because it has matured. That's it.
I think that's exactly it. We are now at a. It's funny to have also this, in a way, this conversation, because this for many marketing directors that we're working with in established businesses, of course, know this. If you go to, I've worked with Nike and Adidas and H&M and companies like that, and of course, it's just
part of the business
knowledge. That you need to do these things, and so I think it's just kind of understanding now that it's just much broader now.
Yeah.
There is more to take in, and the stakes are higher, so you kind of have to step up the game with your branding.
And there's a ton of companies that are doing it. It's not only Supercell or Metacore with their Merge Mansion that have invested into what we see on the top as like an investment into marketing, but part of the investment to marketing is investment into brand, and that is something that hasn't been told enough. And now a lot of companies are just saying, hey, why don't you work with an IP? Basically saying, we don't want to even build a brand. Just lend us a brand and we're going to do it. So this is the same discussion that we're having. So broader industry is talking about work with an IP. And what I wanted to bring up in this conversation is build an IP. It's not as expensive as you think. And if you have an IP as a studio, it will make you so much more valuable than somebody who is working with another company's IP.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you know the He-Man story? Back from the 80s?
No.
Because the He-Man was just a plastic figure.
Yeah.
It was just a very, very popular toy.
Yes.
And they had to do advertising. They had to do some marketing for this He-Man guy. And no one wanted to sell him. None of the toy studios were interested. Now I'm speaking off my top of my head here. Paraphrasing. And then in one meeting, someone was kind of saying that if there would be some kind of they didn't believe that the kids would like read any of the descriptions of the heroes on the packagings, and even though they were comics.
Yeah.
So they were like, do you have something animated or like some video or something that we can show the kids so they kind of understand the characters? Yeah. And in that meeting, that one guy who pitched the He-Man character, he's like, yeah, we're working on this like 1 hour feature with He-Man.
Yeah.
And then so out of this random conversation, he had to go to all these like film studios and try and convince them to do He-Man movies, right, or He-Man. And finally, someone bent over and was like, I think this is more like a 60-episode TV show, like maybe a cartoon. Yeah. And then they started that. Cartoon. And then He-Man became the franchise that he is.
Yeah, because of the story.
Not just because of the plastic figure or let's say the mobile game that you're playing, but the story that they created around it.
Exactly, with all the characters and today, the story is stupid, but still it is a story.
So this is not new. This has been going on forever, and as you said, the industry is getting to a place where it needs to.
It is in the place.
Yeah.
All right, Martin, thank you so much, and for everybody listening, Bond. There will be a link in the description below. You can use them. You can use somebody else, but I think it's worthwhile having a conversation with a creative agency or design agency and see how they can help you to build your own IP. That is incredibly important for a studio. If you can get there by deliberate actions and not an accident, that's much better for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Miska.
Thank you, Martin. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Thank you.